Last month, I posted a video that for me was personally very nerve-wracking because I wasn't sure if people were going to like it or not, and that was the Truth About 7 Colored Fish video. And when I made that video, I was like, okay, this is really interesting to me, but I'm not sure if the YouTube audience really cares about this discussion. However, you guys seem to like it a lot. YouTube actually sent me a notification that said it was the #1 video in terms of views to subscribers, which means that the most subscribers that I got on a video that entire month was from that one video. And that's pretty cool because there were a bunch of really awesome comments in that video that I wanted to make a follow-up to because you guys had a lot of really awesome input. I especially enjoyed watching people argue in the comments about the tail of 7 Colored Fish, specifically the very first original picture and whether or not it had orange in it, because you'd get like 6 comments in a row that would say like, obviously there's an orange, like who couldn't see that? And you get another 6 comments that say like, well, I can't see it, it's not there at all. And it's like, I don't know if people just aren't looking close enough or something, but to me at least the orange seems pretty prominent. In today's video, we're going to sort of take inspiration from a lot of the more sort of insightful comments on that video and make a follow-up video to that original 7 Colored Fish discussion. On the off chance that you haven't seen that first installment of the 7 Colored Fish discussion, I will put a link in the description below because it really is important to watch that one to sort of get where we're coming from. I'm not going to sort of retread over a lot of what I said. I'm mostly going to just have new information in this video. One of the most common comments that I got on that video was to look at the Japanese version, not only for its name but also for its flavored text. So in the English version of this card, the description says a rare rainbow fish that has never been caught by mortal man. And this matters because in Fish and Swaps we were talking about how, okay, it's actually getting swapped by people who are presumably mortal men, which means that maybe that isn't the true 7 Colored Fish. But when you put the Japanese text and you translate it, it doesn't really say anything about never being caught by a mortal man. It just says it's quite difficult to catch. Now, while this might not seem like a big deal, it actually is, because previously people that had only read the English version of the card, like myself, we sort of looked at Fish and Swaps and said, well, that can't possibly be 7 Colored Fish, and or those are not mortal men. Also remember that 7 Colored Fish was shown being sort of traded in the background of Single Purchase. For me, going off of the English text, I was saying, well, okay, maybe those aren't considered men because they're goblins, so maybe that's a little bit different, but in reality, I think that when we look at the Japanese flavor text, it does explain a lot of these other artworks. With that in mind, I think that the 7 Colored Fish in the artwork of cards like Fish and Swaps and Single Purchase are in fact the same 7 Colored Fish from the original card. We're going to come back to that in a few minutes and talk about a little bit more why the color might have changed from artwork to artwork, but for now I want to focus on the other big debate: what color is the tail of 7 Colored Fish in the original artwork? First up, one of my friends pointed out, and it was super helpful, that he said that some of you guys, probably a lot of you guys actually, watched that video on your cell phone, and in that case you might not have been zoomed in enough to actually see the difference in coloring on this card's tail. So we're going to zoom in really far here, so hopefully you guys can see the red and the orange now. I'll even draw a line in between them, so hopefully that helps too. Some people suggested that I use like the color picker from Photoshop to go over the red color and the orange color. The problem with that is that I feel like you can sort of beat the system by taking from specific areas, so I'll just zoom in really far and let you guys make your own decision. More importantly though, and I feel really dumb that I didn't actually look this up for the last video, all we really have to do to learn the colors of 7 Colored Fish is look at an actual rainbow. This might seem really obvious, and now it really does to me. I'm not sure why I didn't think about that in the last video, but probably because I was so focused on just finding which colors were considered the 7 colors that I wasn't thinking about the rainbow aspect of this fish. We actually did this on a live stream, but when I googled what a standard rainbow was, you know, the Roy G. Biv rainbow, I noticed that it pretty much fell into what I thought about 7 Colored Fish and maybe disproved people that didn't think the orange existed. So a standard rainbow, and keep in mind it is not in the same order as 7 Colored Fish, it goes red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, the Roy G. Biv as I said. Now if you look on 7 Colored Fish, the original artwork, all of those colors are found as long as you believe me that the orange is there, which hopefully you do after you saw that I zoomed in on the tail. So I believe now this new knowledge that the original 7 Colored Fish is in fact every single color of the rainbow embodied on the actual fish. Not counting the teeth or the lips or the mouth or anything along those lines. On the actual fish, the scales as well as the tail at the end, the yellow part, all sort of embody every single color on the rainbow. This is further amplified by the fact that the translated name of this card from the original OCG name is Rainbow Fish, fish, not 7 colored fish. If it's a 7 colored fish, I mean, it can be any 7 colors, but if it's specifically a rainbow fish, it has to be the Roy G. Biv colors, which makes a lot of sense. However, even if you agree with me about rainbow fish, aka 7 colored fish, and that it embodies one of each of the Roy G. Biv rainbow colors, that doesn't quite explain the newer artworks, because in the newer artworks, some liberties have been taken. For example, if you look at pretty much any of the other artworks for 7 colored fish, when it is featured in other cards, either in the forefront or the background, you can almost always find 2 different greens at the head of the fish. It's a very light green, and then it goes to emerald, which is very clearly, at least in my opinion, and going off of the Roy G. Biv, not present in the original artwork. Also, there seems to be a pretty big inconsistency with the back end of the fish and whether or not it has orange and red or just red. Now, a lot of you guys pointed out that maybe I was a little bit too hard on the artwork of Fish and Kicks, because there are certain fish in the background of that card where you actually can see both the red and the orange, even though it's not all of them. Fish and Swaps is a little bit harder because it seems like you could sort of rule it either way. It's not a ruling or anything, but it seems like you could look at that artwork and say, okay, I can see only red with some light shading at the end, or you can say that you see red and orange. I think both opinions on that card are pretty valid. And it was at that point in the original video where I said, okay, we can tell the color has changed from fish to fish, from artwork to artwork, but I didn't really have a solid reasoning for that. And that's where you guys came in. So I want to go through some of the more popular answers and kind of talk about my opinion of them, because you guys had a lot of ideas that I never would have come up by myself, so I want to highlight them in today's video. First off, one of the more popular answers, and this is sort of going off of the artwork of Forgotten Temple of the Deep, where 7 colored fish is featured next to a temple that is buried underwater. You guys noticed how large the 7 colored fish looked in that artwork. I mean, it is huge. It's like the size of a staircase, but in Fish and Swaps, he has a whole bunch of them in one tank, and they look really, really small, just like a couple feet long, versus like this 10 or 15 feet long 7 colored fish in Forgotten Temple of the Deep. And in that way, a lot of you guys said, well, okay, maybe those ones in Fish and Swap, as well as the other artworks, maybe those are just baby ones, you know, the baby version of the bigger fish, and maybe their colors are different. You know, lots of animals change their appearance when they're babies versus when they're adults, and that does make a lot of sense. I like that comment a lot. A lot of you guys pointed that out, and I really, really enjoyed it, because I was like, oh, I didn't really look at the scale of one 7 colored fish versus another, but now that I think about it, yeah, the ones in some of those artworks are really, really small, and those are the ones that have different colors. Another comment that I saw is that the 7 colored fish featured in the original artwork and in Forgotten Temple of the Deep is like a mythological version of just a regular rainbow fish featured in Fish and Swaps and the other artworks. This does make a lot of sense. You know, it's sort of like the Loch Ness Monster of rainbow fish, and I like that idea a lot, sort of like a mythological version of this fish that a lot of people encounter in their day-to-day lives, but this version is huge and cannot be caught by mortal man, or at the very least is very difficult to catch. To me, at least, it would be like a unicorn compared to a horse. You know, a horse and a unicorn, they look very, very similar, except for one key difference, the horn, obviously, and in some cases wings as well. That's more like a Pegasus. Anyway, you have a mythological version of a real animal, and maybe in this case it's the same thing. The 7 colored fish that we see is the true rainbow fish that has one of each color from the rainbow, but the regular version, the Fish and Swaps version, is just a lot of different colors. And for me personally, you know, I've done 2 different videos on this vanilla monster from way back in the day, and that's kind of crazy, but I want these color changes from card to card, from artwork to actually be meaningful, to be purposeful. But a lot of you guys pointed out, you know, the other really big common comment was that maybe the artists that were doing the newer artworks just didn't care as much as I do when talking about 7 colored fish. And this makes a lot of sense, and it might actually be the answer. If you're someone that years later says, okay, I need to get an artwork with 7 colored fish, this old card, you just might glance at it, get the basic shape, get the basic idea. You might not care enough to compare it to an actual rainbow and make sure that all the colors are present. This makes sense especially because on that video I saw all sorts of comments from people saying that they do see 2 different greens in the original artwork, but they don't see the red and the orange. And I also saw a lot of funny comments from people that were colorblind. Hopefully no one that was colorblind made the new artworks. I don't think that's what happened, but just in general, a lot of people see different things in the original artwork without doing the initial research. Hopefully now that I've showed you an actual rainbow and you sort of looked at the original artwork, you can see all of the colors present, but at least on these newer artworks, they definitely are not. It's very clear that there are 2 different greens which are not featured in a regular rainbow that we think of. So what I'm trying to say is that while I love researching random stuff like 7-colored fish and why the artwork has changed and how it changed and when it changed, it might end up being just like one artist making an executive decision to change the coloring just a little bit. This might not actually have a bigger meaning, which is kind of a shame, but it still was pretty fun to research it. That's probably all I have to say about 7-colored fish, and this time I really mean it. It's really cool that I had enough content to make a second video. I think this discussion is super interesting, even if it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. At this point, the only way that I'd ever make a third installment of this series, it's not really a series, but a third installment about 7-colored fish would be if we got like a couple more card artworks that featured the 7-colored fish, either the original one or the new one with different colors. That actually might be interesting enough to make a follow-up video on, although I'm not really sure how likely that is to happen, at least not in the near future. Anyway though, hope you guys enjoyed the sequel to the initial Truth About 7-Colored Fish video. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. I doubt many of you have watched all the way through this video and haven't watched the original, but just in case that has happened, make sure you click the link at the end of this video to sort of watch the original and see where the discussion started. I'll see you later though. Thanks so much for watching. Goodbye.